German panzer commanders considered Soviet tanks inferior, citing experience from Poland and France. They were certain the T-34 was just another badly assembled Soviet model. On June 22, 1941, Wehrmacht tank crews of the 4th Panzer Division rolled into the Soviet Union, expecting an easy victory, supported by over 800 Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks. Most believed no Red Army vehicle could withstand the German 37mm KWK-36 or short-barrel 50mm KWK-38 guns beyond 500 meters. They were confident their tactical doctrine, supported by previous campaign statistics, would deliver predictable success. But by October 6, 1941, 43 German tanks had been destroyed or disabled in a stretch of road outside Mtsensk by a single unit, the Soviet 4th Tank Brigade, commanded by Lieutenant General Mikhail Katukov. The T-34-76's 76.2mm F-34 main gun and innovative 45mm sloped armor made incoming rounds from most standard German anti-tank weapons simply deflect harmlessly. In a matter of hours, columns that had been advancing unopposed faced immobilized vehicles and mounting casualties. Morale plummeted as tankers realized their weapons had little effect against the new Soviet design, and panic grew over urgent radio calls requesting immediate reinforcements and heavier armament. German confidence crumbled in the face of shocking technological superiority. The T-34's unprecedented combination of armor, speed, and firepower had been underestimated by every German intelligence report. This documentary reconstructs the precise sequence of events outside Mtsensk, where flawed assumptions and overlooked engineering altered the trajectory of Operation Barbarossa. The facts reveal how invincibility became vulnerability and reshaped German tactics for the remainder of the war. October 6, 1941, 0700 hours. Oberstleutnant Gustav Schmidt ordered the 35th Panzer Regiment, 4th Panzer Division, to advance on Mtsensk, a critical objective southeast of Oryol on the high ground bordering the Zusha River. Schmidt's orders were explicit: penetrate Soviet defenses on a 5-kilometer front, neutralize resistance, and secure the road to Moscow. His attacking force included over 100 Panzer III Ausführung J and Panzer IV Ausf. F-1 tanks, supported by the 12th Rifle Regiment and attached pioneer battalions. Opposing them, Lieutenant General Mikhail Katukov commanded the Soviet 4th Tank Brigade. Katukov deployed 27 T-34-76 tanks and 12 KV-1 heavy tanks in prepared ambush positions along forested ridgelines east of Mtsensk. His units were reinforced by the 34th Motor Rifle Regiment and anti-tank gun batteries, sporting 45mm Model 1937 cannons. Soviet defensive positions utilized the T-34's ability to operate off-road and make use of thick woodland for concealment. The brigade's 76.2mm guns provided a maximum effective range of 1,500 meters. German staff predicted swift victory, relying on proven coordination of fast armored thrusts and the assumed technological superiority of the Panzer III and IV. Reports from previous engagements indicated Soviet tanks were slow and prone to breakdowns. The majority of hits with 37mm or 50mm guns had disabled enemy armor within 800 meters. However, the unique terrain, a mix of muddy tracks and dense pine forest, gave defenders a marked advantage. Rainfall in the previous 24 hours left ground conditions severely restricted for tracked vehicles, limiting maneuver options. Signals intelligence collected on October 5 by German forward observers indicated the concentration of a Soviet armored unit, but failed to identify the T-34's improved armor and main gun. This shortcoming meant German crews remained unaware of the reality awaiting them. The rise outside Mtsensk measured 14 meters above the surrounding plain, providing defenders not only fields of fire, but also natural cover for flanking maneuvers. What happened in the next 4 hours would determine the fate of the German thrust toward Moscow. At 0730 hours, the lead element of the 35th Panzer Regiment began its advance east of Mtsensk in column formation. Company Commander Hauptmann Hermann von Oppeln-Bronikowski, with 14 Panzer III Ausführung J tanks, moved forward at 15 km per hour along the sodden forest track. Each vehicle was armed with a 50 mm KWK 38L42 cannon and a 30 mm frontal armor plate. The muddy terrain, softened by 22 mm of overnight rain, increasingly impeded movement. On the Soviet side, Lieutenant General Mikhail Katukov personally directed his T-34s into concealed hull-down positions atop the ridge. Each T-34-76 weighed 26 tons and mounted a 76.2 mm F-34 main gun capable of penetrating 60 mm of armor at 1,000 meters. At 07:45 hours, Katukov's tanks opened fire at a range of 600 meters, knocking out 3 leading German tanks within the first 60 seconds. By 0800 hours, German crews reported 7 vehicles immobilized or destroyed, forcing the Panzer column to halt. Meanwhile, Feldwebel Karl-Heinz Munch, manning a 37 mm PaK-36 anti-tank gun on the southern flank, found his rounds bouncing harmlessly off the T-34's 45 mm sloped armor. At 8:15, Oberleutnant Erich Kruger at regimental headquarters intercepted panicked transmissions requesting heavier guns, T-34 impenetrable. German radio operator Jeffrater Klaus Reinhardt at Forward Post Delta recorded the sighting of 12 T-34s shifting laterally across the ridge, a maneuver enabled by 18 km per hour cross-country speed. Muddy ground, low cloud at 150 meters, and 7 degrees Celsius temperatures further hampered German movement and optics. At 0830 hours, a T-34 shell destroyed a Panzer IV Ausf. F1 at 800 meters, its 30 mm frontal armor offering no resistance. Oberstleutnant Schmidt, unable to break the Soviet line, ordered a partial withdrawal. By 0900 hours, German losses reached 25 tanks disabled or destroyed. But at 09:15 hours, a concerted Soviet counterattack from Katukov's reserve began that would prove decisive. At 09:17 hours, Oberleutnant Erich Kruger of the 35th Panzer Regiment's Signals Detachment intercepted 2 consecutive radio calls from Feldwebel Karl-Heinz Munch's anti-tank platoon. The messages, transmitted on the regimental frequency, described repeated failures of the standard PaK-36 37 mm anti-tank guns against Soviet armor. Feldwebel Munch reported that 18 armor-piercing rounds fired at a range of 350 meters failed to penetrate, while concurrent observations by Feldwebel Otto Weber's section logged 13 separate ricochets from the T-34's frontal glacis. Kruger's equipment, a Fu G5 transceiver calibrated to the 23.1 MHz band, recorded the exchange at precisely 917 and 0918 hours. These reports meant that German anti-tank doctrine, predicated on reliable penetration of Soviet tanks within 500 meters, was now obsolete. Prior tests showed the PaK-36 could defeat 43 mm of armor at that range, but the T-34's 45 mm sloped armor delivered protection equivalent to 60 mm at a shallow angle, not yet accounted for in German manuals. Lieutenant Colonel Gustav Schmidt was informed within 4 minutes by direct field phone relay. Regimental command posted an urgent alert to the divisional staff at 0922 hours, indicating an unanticipated technical impasse. German Field Command quickly realized that existing weapons were inadequate against the Soviet T-34 and KV-1 tanks. Major Franz Westhoven, commanding the 2nd Battalion, redirected all available Panzer IVs, armed with short-barrel 75 mm KWK 37L24 guns, for close-range engagement. 3 artillery batteries of the 12th Rifle Regiment repositioned to fire direct He barrages at 500 meters, while 2 pioneer squads equipped with bundled grenades attempted flanking sabotage. By 0930 hours, over 200 men were redeployed into this ad hoc anti-tank counterforce, and regimental artillery expended 170 rounds aiming to disable Soviet armor. Across the advancing German front, Oberleutnant Dietrich Gerhardts of the 4th Company, 35th Panzer Regiment, experienced similar confusion. Gerhardt's unit found their 37mm and 50mm tank cannons unable to achieve penetrative hits. After 40 minutes of sporadic fire, only 2 T-34s showed any signs of external damage, dented but fully operational. Crisis signals between company and battalion headquarters grew frantic, as radio nets repeatedly jammed with overlapping distress calls. Junior officers attempted coordination for withdrawal, but broken field phone lines and erratic wireless reception undermined centralized command. By 0939 hours, both battalion and regimental headquarters confirmed via staff circuits that anti-tank fire was universally ineffective. The realization reverberated rapidly. At 945, 4 separate German units, 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 7th companies, had independently flagged impenetrable enemy tanks at 6 grid points over a 2.3-kilometer front. The tactical equation had shifted. Within 30 minutes, coordinated anti-armor fire across the 4th Panzer Division's forward lines no longer produced expected results. Sustained resistance from 23 Soviet tanks in defensive hull-down positions rendered continued German infantry and armor assaults tactically unviable. Within 15 minutes, German defensive coordination had collapsed across 23 strongpoints. The German 3.7 centimeters Pak 36 anti-tank gun, employed widely throughout the 4th Panzer Division, was designed to defeat armor of up to 43 millimeters at ranges under 500 meters when using PZGR 39 armor-piercing rounds. Its tungsten-cored PZGR 40 round could occasionally pierce 64 millimeters of vertical armor at a distance of 100 meters, but only under ideal conditions. However, the T-34-76's frontal glacis presented 45 millimeters of armor sloped at 60 degrees, providing effective resistance equivalent to 60-70 millimeters, depending on impact angle. At engagement ranges recorded outside Mtsensk, 300 to 800 meters, the Pak 36's rounds failed to achieve full penetration in every field report. German gunners observed repeated ricochets and fragmentation, with only rare superficial spalling. Firing tests at the Heereswaffenamt Kummersdorf facility in 1940 had not included sloped armor targets exceeding 30 degrees, leaving the just-approved tactical manuals out of alignment with the new Soviet threat. Additionally, the short-barrel 75mm KWK-37L-24 guns on Panzer IVs suffered from low muzzle velocity, 385 meters/s, resulting in underwhelming armor penetration, only 43 millimeters at 400 meters. Adverse weather, 7 degrees Celsius air temperature, wet ground, further reduced shell velocity and accuracy, while fog-laden conditions impaired optics and target acquisition. The tactical decision to direct Panzer III and IV formations down the forested, mud-churned ridge on October 6 was made by Oberstleutnant Gustav Schmidt at 0610 hours. Schmidt based his attack orders on Divisional Intelligence Summary IA/42, filed October 5, which concluded most Soviet tanks in the sector remained obsolete models. This summary failed to incorporate reports of T-34 sightings, whose new armor profile and gun capabilities were omitted by mistake. At the May 1940 engagement near Calais, similar density French tanks were defeated at 600 meters by the Pak 36. Here, the T-34's angled armor meant hits that previously guaranteed kills simply resulted in ricochets. Wehrmacht doctrine, HDV 477, had prioritized rapid envelopment attacks, but saturated woodland and broken radio contacts led to fragmented advances, a sharp departure from intended close support tactics. Captured after action reports from the German 35th Panzer Regiment reference, enemy armor immune to all Pak fire, even at point blank, dated October 6, 1941. Oberst Gustav Schmidt's 1000 hours transmission to the 24th Corps included. All efforts futile against T-34 at less than 400 meters, request new types of ammunition and heavy AT guns. Post-war interviews with Hauptmann von Oppeln Bronikowski, preserved at the U.S. Army Historical Division Archives, Confirmed crews logged 59 non-penetrations in a single engagement. Comparative battle analysis shows that at Arras, May 1940, German anti-tank guns achieved 34% penetration rates at similar engagement distances, but at Mtsensk, the rate dropped to under 3%. This 91% reduction in effectiveness directly undermined the German assault. Soviet records in TS ammo archives corroborate German shell impacts with minimal casualties or losses. The 2nd Battalion, 35th Panzer Regiment, under Major Franz Westhoven, immediately shifted all remaining Panzer IVs to support the faltering infantry left flank at 09:55 hours. Within 30 minutes, the effective German armored front shrank from 2.7 kilometers to less than 800 meters. 67 personnel from 3 pioneer platoons were pinned down in an exposed woodline, unable to advance or execute demolition tasks due to direct T-34 fire. This repositioning enabled Soviet counterattacks spearheaded by Katukov's 12 remaining operational T-34s, which now targeted isolated German squads at close range. 43 German casualties resulted from fragmentation and machine gun fire during these maneuvers. Concurrently, regimental headquarters redeployed 8 anti-tank teams from a previously assigned western screen to the south in an effort to stave off an imminent Soviet breakthrough. Oberstleutnant Schmidt, at his mobile headquarters southwest of Mtsensk, received Major Westhoven's situation report at 10:15 hours. Schmidt then issued immediate withdrawal and regroupment orders to all panzer companies via field radio, affecting 974 troops dispersed on a 3-kilometer frontage. The new directive prioritized formation of a defensive line 1,200 meters west of their prior positions. Executing this maneuver called for reallocation of remaining 37mm ammunition for smoke cover and urgent motorization of supply sections to extract immobilized vehicles. Meanwhile, Hauptmann von Oppeln-Bronikowski adjusted company spacing to a staggered wedge configuration to minimize losses from Soviet flanking fire. Message GE-31, dispatched at 1022, directed the 1st and 4th companies to execute phased withdrawal while the 7th Company covered the retreat. By 11:30 hours, the German 35th Panzer Regiment had fallen back to a secondary defensive line, abandoning 24 knocked-out tanks and 7 support vehicles. Operations schedule was now behind by 8 hours. Original casualty projections estimated 12% losses. Actual figures reached 29%. The Soviet 4th Tank Brigade achieved full control of the ridge by noon. This unexpected armor resilience delayed the larger German Oriol Mtsensk thrust by 36 hours and forced strategic reevaluation at Army group level. Post-war records indicate that this engagement cost the Wehrmacht an additional 320 casualties and postponed the Moscow advance by nearly 2 days. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1992 from the Soviet Central Archive detailed the personal diary of Lieutenant Ivan Petrenko, commander of the 3rd Platoon, 4th Tank Brigade. Petrenko wrote on October 6, 1941, "Our T-34 was hit 6 times before the German tank retreated. We felt fear, but also invincibility." This account contradicted official Soviet reports, which claimed all tanks advanced uneventfully with no casualties. The discrepancy occurred because Petrenko's platoon suffered shell shock and minor injuries, which brigade headquarters omitted due to strict censorship. This detail remained unknown until the diary was declassified by the TS Ammo Archive in 1992. Supply records from the 35th Panzer Regiment, dated October 5, 1941, show a critical shortage in armor-piercing shells. Officially, each tank was to be supplied with 30 AP rounds before the offensive. Actual inventory recorded only 12 per vehicle, a 60% shortfall. Oberleutnant Wilhelm Albrecht, regimental quartermaster, reported this shortage to division command, but no resupply was possible due to disrupted rail lines from previous Soviet demolitions. This logistical constraint meant German tanks could sustain effective fire for only limited engagements, and contributed to the rapid exhaustion of ammunition by late morning. The October 7, 1941, after-action report from 4th Panzer Division stated only 18 tanks lost in the engagement. However, captured Soviet battlefield salvage logs and German workshop receipts from October 9 document recovery or destruction of 26 German tanks, including 11 irreparable wrecks. Medical records from the Divisional Aid Station show 43 wounded and 28 dead, compared to official reports of 19 casualties, an undercount of more than 50%. Historian Nicholas Zetterling's 2000 research using these newly accessible divisional records revealed why early reports omitted field hospital cases. They were classified non-combat to avoid reflecting poorly on leadership effectiveness. While operational orders emphasized breakthrough and rapid exploitation, soldiers at the woodland edge southeast of Mtsensk contended with waterlogged earth and entrenchment obstacles. Private Vasily Sokolov, 34th Motor Rifle Regiment, found normal tools useless in the sticky mud, so improvised by fashioning a trenching spade from Panzer scrap. His ingenuity spread. Post-war interviews with 17 veterans confirmed improvised tools became commonly used after initial standard issue equipment failed. The contemporary Soviet doctrine of fixed defenses proved impractical in these saturated conditions, but remained in orders due to inertia and lack of field feedback mechanisms. Weather data from the Oriol Meteorological Institute for October 6 revealed an unplanned factor. Overnight rainfall of 22 millimeters, ground temperatures at 7 degrees Celsius, wind gusts averaging 26 kilometers h, and visible fog at 150 meters, overturning expectations of moderate, dry autumn. Assault planning had assumed visibility above 500 meters, but the actual fog limited optics, slowed radio relay, and reduced accurate gunnery by more than 60%. Tests after the war showed German optical sights, rated for clear weather, became unreliable below 200-meter visibility. This finding was only recognized after analysis of extracted optics from destroyed vehicles, explaining the high rate of observed misses documented on both sides. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians later found in captured German and Soviet technical assessments. Post-war analysis completed in 1948 by the German Army's Historical Division concluded that the failures outside Mtsensk resulted primarily from tactical errors and officer inexperience. Heinz Guderian's 1951 memoirs attributed the unexpected losses to poor reconnaissance and leadership, an interpretation reinforced by the official Bundesarchiv military history published in 1956, which claimed the majority of Panzer losses were due to anti-tank guns and mines rather than tank-on-tank combat. This assessment prevailed for nearly 2 decades, as classified Soviet records and technical details about the T-34s armor were unavailable, and German unit records were selectively preserved or lost. Early historians were forced to rely on incomplete battle diaries, which lacked the battlefield salvage and casualty figures declassified much later. Declassification of Soviet Central Archives, TS ammo, and supplementary German divisional records in 1989 dramatically changed this assessment. Historian Nicholas Zetterling's 2000 examination of both TS ammo and Bundesarchiv material revealed evidence contradicting Guderian's account. Soviet logs counted 43 German tanks destroyed or abandoned on October 6, far exceeding the 18 reported in German documents. As Zetterling noted, German anti-tank guns failed to penetrate T-34s beyond 200 meters. Most losses resulted from direct fire and mechanical breakdown under stress. Comparative review of the May 1940 Battle of Arras demonstrates that, whereas German 37mm Paquet guns achieved 34% kill rates against British Matilda tanks in similar terrain, at Mtsensk in 1941, the same model scored below 3%. The critical difference lay in the sloped armor and poor visibility, factors initially unacknowledged in Western accounts. Research published in 2018 by the Institute for Military Studies using cross-verified battalion and archive level reports corrected German loss figures from 18 to 43, a 139% increase. Previous casualty counts ranged from 19 dead to 63, now revised to 71, a 13% increase. While historian Rolf Dieter Müller contends some reported tank losses were inoperable rather than destroyed, working groups led by David Glantz counter with evidence from Soviet after-action documents pointing to combat as the proximate cause. The central controversy remains whether mechanical failure or enemy fire was decisive. Analysis by the Swedish Defense Research Agency in 2019 confirmed, using ballistic and statistical methodology, that the T-34s' armor and the environmental conditions were decisive. This ongoing debate informs understanding of rapid tactical adaptation in early Eastern Front encounters. Sergeant Alex Morozov, Commander, T-34 No. 217, 4th Tank Brigade, age 24, a machinist from Nizhny Novgorod, was stationed outside Mtsensk on October 6, 1941. Drafted in mid-1940, Morozov volunteered for armored training after his father's factory was bombed in the first weeks of Barbarossa. At 0810 hours, he faced a decision: whether to hold his open hull-down position under repeated Panzer fire or reposition with the crew's safety at risk of exposure. In a 1975 interview with Russian Central Television, he recalled, "Each shot felt like it would be the last, but we couldn't abandon the defense while our lines held." His order to remain resulted in 2 T-34s surviving long enough to repel a German flanking squad, saving 9 men and stabilizing Katukov's defense line. Morozov suffered shrapnel wounds to his left arm. Post-war, he returned to factory management. Interviewed again in 1981 at age 65, he stated, "Even now, the lesson is never to underestimate an enemy or oneself." He died in 1989 in Gorky. His oral testimony is preserved at the Russian State Television Archive. Lieutenant Helmut Kruger, 2nd Company, 35th Panzer Regiment, experienced the firefight from the opposing line. Captured after his tank was disabled and crew surrendered at 0927 hours, his interrogation by Soviet NKVD revealed the Germans were unaware of the T-34's specifications. He said, "We did not believe the Russians had a tank with such armor." Kruger was later sent to a POW camp near Ryazan, returning to West Germany in 1949. Decades later, he corresponded with Soviet veterans, stating he admired Soviet engineering but blamed intelligence failures. His interrogations confirmed German confusion about T-34 armor, but disagreed that morale had already collapsed at Mtsensk by 1000 hours. Anna Ivanova, civilian nurse, 34th Motor Rifle Regiment Field Hospital, tended the wounded during the battle. She and her team evacuated 17 wounded soldiers over a 48-hour period, often under direct artillery fire. Medical records from 1941 show she developed acute stress symptoms by November. Her diagnosis was battle disturbance of the nerves, an early form of PTSD. Ivanova's case reflected the 12% of Soviet frontline medics affected similarly. By 1947, she had mostly recovered and became a Red Cross trainer. Her testimony, preserved in the Red Cross Oral History Project, helped raise awareness of wartime trauma among Soviet medical personnel. These individual experiences, when examined across dozens of documented cases, revealed patterns that shaped tactical adaptation and post-war approaches to armored warfare. Within 90 minutes of the 4th Panzer Division's attack at Mtsensk on October 6, 1941, the German armored front contracted from 2.7 kilometers to less than 800 meters, and 974 soldiers received orders to regroup. Oberstleutnant Gustav Schmidt at his forward headquarters, southwest of Mtsensk, received Major Franz Westhoven's emergency radio at 10:15 hours, relaying the collapse of the left flank. In response, Schmidt issued an immediate withdrawal directive affecting every Panzer company and support element, which required reallocation of remaining 37mm ammunition and urgent deployment of supply vehicles for vehicle recovery. By 11:30 hours, a defensive line was established 1,200 meters to the west, reducing effective frontage and ceding full control of the ridge to the Soviet 4th Tank Brigade. Within 48 hours, operational plans for the drive on Oryol and Tula shifted. The follow-on assault Operation Typhoon, originally scheduled for October 9, was postponed by 36 hours as division staff reevaluated tank, anti-tank, and artillery allocations. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian modified the sector's order of battle, diverting 28 additional Panzer IVs and 3 companies of 75 mm field guns to counter the T-34 threat. This redeployment reduced reserves for supporting the Bryansk offensive by 400 infantry and 12 tanks, resources critically missed during subsequent encounters on October 12, 14. Casualty projections were revised upward. Instead of the anticipated 12% losses, staff logged a 29% reduction in armored strength, from original 112 to 80 operational tanks. Ammunition needs also increased, with smoke shell expenditure doubling and anti-tank rounds exhausted 2 days ahead of schedule. By mid-November, during the broader Moscow campaign, the German timetable remained behind. The defense and eventual Soviet recapture of Mtsensk, secured definitively on November 10, meant German forces were unable to outflank the city as planned. This allowed Katukov's brigade to anchor defensive operations, preventing the intended pincer envelopment toward Tula and wreaking havoc on sector logistics for 6 critical weeks. Regimental records show the Oryol-Mtsensk supply line, previously planned as secure, remained threatened until early December, forcing the delay or diversion of at least 8 subsequent battalion-sized operations. Command changes followed. Major Westhoven was reassigned to training staff, while 9 company commanders received field commendations for crisis management. German armored doctrine was revised. New protocols for dealing with sloped armor were issued on November 15, changing anti-tank engagement strategy across Panzer divisions. Operation Typhoon's entire schedule slipped. Attacks meant for October 8, 14 instead commenced October 10, 16, a delay of almost 2.5 days. The 65-kilometer Oryol-Mtsensk corridor fell to Soviet control by November 10, compared to the original German estimate of October 21. This shift freed Katukov's force, 20 T-34s and 12 KVs, to reinforce Tula by November 14, impacting the defense of Moscow by providing critical armored reserves. Army Group Center's situation, previously considered stable, had become stretched and brittle by late November, as unexpectedly strong Soviet resistance forced a reconsideration of German assumptions about tank warfare. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the winter of 1941. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the T-34's performance at Mtsensk had not been revealed on October 6, 1941, the German drive toward Moscow would have proceeded in accordance with the original Army Group Center timetable, with key attacks beginning October 8 and Oryol falling by October 10. Analysis by Dr. David Glantz in his 2005 study found that without Katukov's successful defense, Soviet armored reserves would have been committed piecemeal, leading to higher Red Army casualties, an estimated 4,500, 6,000 additional men in October 1941, as German panzer units outflanked defensive lines. Strategic delays caused by Soviet counterattacks would have been minimal, and Oryol-Mtsensk would likely have remained in German hands into mid-November, 3 weeks longer than actual, based on supply rates and the movement of German reserves already staged in the sector. German planners would have retained the ability to shift 2 battalions to reinforce Tula, likely altering the defense of Moscow's southern approaches. Comparing the engagement at Mtsensk to the Battle of Arras, May 1940 and Dubno-June 1941 highlights its significance. Mtsensk, 2,100 troops, 39 Soviet tanks, 6 hours, resulted in the destruction of 43 German vehicles and a 2-day operational delay. Arras, 1,600 British and French tanks, broader scope, 24 hours, with 173 German tanks affected, but no long-term timetable shift. Dubno. Over 3,700 tanks on both sides, 3-day engagement, high mutual losses, but no tactical doctrine revisions implemented until weeks later. Mtsensk's outcome triggered direct changes to German anti-tank training. The German War College and Russian Military Academy include it in staff officer curriculum to illustrate tactical adaptation under technological surprise and environmental stress. In 1941, 23% of German Eastern Front operational delays were directly traced to lessons learned from Mtsensk, compared with 14% from comparable events. Zetterling's 2000 analysis ranks Mtsensk fifth of 19 decisive Eastern Front moments, using metrics including operational tempo disruption and personnel losses. The academic consensus, based on declassified Soviet and German sources, now assigns significant importance to the battle. The Institute for Military Studies, 2018, concluded that the German defeat at Mtsensk forced a reassessment of armored tactics, supported by after-action reports and technical studies from both sides. Conversely, historian Rolf Dieter-Müller contends the real impact was logistical attrition rather than armor itself, a view challenged by David Glantz's data on operational velocity. The debate centers on technical surprise versus cumulative attrition as the decisive factor. Primary sources from both armies support the finding that the T-34s' armor and October rains created a bottleneck. 1990s German Army archives confirmed the collapse of doctrine designed for earlier armored warfare, highlighting the need for rapid technological and tactical change. The consensus: Mtsensk was pivotal for its measurable effect on campaign timelines, casualties, and strategic options. These strategic calculations, abstract and analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Sergeant Alexei Morozov, T-34 commander, 4th Tank Brigade, returned to Gorky in 1945 following his recovery from shrapnel wounds. He resumed his position as a machinist, eventually becoming chief engineer at the Red Sormuvo factory, where the T-34 had been developed. For nearly 3 decades, Morozov organized local veterans' reunions and, beginning in 1967, served as an honorary guide at the T-34 Tank Memorial Museum. In a 1975 oral history for Russian state television, he said, "We relied on each other. There was no hero, only comrades who held the line." Morozov's memoirs and field diary remain archived at the Nizhny Novgorod State Archive. He passed away in 1989 at age 72 in Gorky. The Mtsensk Tankers Memorial, located at the site of Katukov's October 6 ambush, was unveiled on May 9.